And for our friendship and for those kind words, I'm grateful as well. Thank you. Our son Ian is a junior at Allegheny College, where he's studying history. I described Ian's recent college experience at Allegheny this way. Ian has discovered that there's a light bulb and there's a socket. And when you screw the light bulb into the socket, an amazing thing happens. The light comes on. Something's happened in Ian's life. I'm so proud that my son has figured it out, because the light is burning bright as he begins to discover what his future holds. It's because of his college experience. Now, as you might imagine, it hasn't always been that way for Ian. His early college career was pretty tumultuous. He partied too hard, studied too little, couldn't seem to figure out who he was or where he was going. His potential seemed very cloudy. There were times that Sally and I wondered if he would ever figure it out. But remarkably, for our son, the light has come on. And our son is well on his way to discovering what God intends for his life. Ian is not an isolated case. There have been countless numbers of college students who can nod their head in agreement over the illustration of how the light came on and stayed on because of the experience in their chosen college. In fact, it's because those transformative experiences happened that you and I find ourselves back here today at good old Wesleyan for homecoming. If you didn't have a bank of experiences and stories that tell a bit of who you are, of how your life was blessed, altered, focused, illumined, maybe even transformed by this place, you probably would have not found your way back to this homecoming this weekend. This is a place where the light comes on. In our revered alma mater, which, by the way, I can sing if you like, there is a line, oh, why not? At thy magic, mystic fountains, countless dreams of life began. That wasn't countless, it was nobless. At thy magic, mystic fountains, noblest dreams of life began. I never really thought about that line until I began to prepare for these remarks. The song, written by Wesleyan President Wallace Fleming, has been sung by students and faculty members here at Wesleyan for nearly 97 years. In the voices that have taken the time to know the words and sing the tune, there are countless stories of noblest dreams that began right here at Wesleyan. Times when the bulb was screwed into the socket and the light came on. What are your stories? What do you recall, even in this moment? A noble dream that began in this place that altered and shaped everything about who you are. Do you remember? I do. Someday, when Jenkins Hall is torn down, I'd like to have, a simple request, when Jenkins Hall is torn down, I would like to have a piece of ceramic tile from the 3rd floor and a broom from Jenkins Hall. In the fall of 1976, I was a 70s version of my son Ian. I had not yet discovered that there was a light bulb. I did not know that there was a socket, let alone the revelation that the tube could provide a great light. The transition from home to college was tough. The transition from high school to college academics was even tougher. On those nights when I just could not sleep, I would often wander out into the hallway and find a place to sit on the tile floor on the 3rd floor, so as not to disturb my roommate. I would sit on the cold tile in the hallway and read. One night, I realized that there was another person just down the hall who was also sitting on that cold tile floor who had done the very same thing. Just 3 doors down was another student who couldn't sleep at night. What happened in the months to follow was a friendship that began to evolve. The downers of sleepless nights turned into the blessing of a new relationship that later turned into my eventual roommate, who today is a lifelong friend that I cherish. And although the miles separate us, how wonderful it is to pick up the phone, no matter where I am, and sit down in another hallway and pick right back up where we left off. Rich and I have done that for 39 years. Those times on the 3rd floor of Jacobs Hall were nights when the lights came on, and I began to understand more completely about relationships. I want a piece of that tile, but I also want a broom. Nearly every day I would have a conversation, sometimes just as simple as a hello, with one of the custodians who took care of Jenkins Hall. In the midst of the days when I was trying to figure out where the light bulb was, Mr. Lemon was a kind, gracious person who took an interest in my life. On days when I wondered if I was going to make it through to the next semester, I found that a janitor at West Virginia Wesleyan College shared a friendly spirit with me that got me through to the next day. In 1979, when I began my pastoral career as the student pastor of the Adrian Charge, which was at the time 6 tiny little churches just south of here, one of those churches was the Big Bend congregation. It was a classic rural West Virginia church. Set next to a farm, it came complete with a pot-bellied stove, where on cold days I would sit around the pot-bellied stove and share the sermon with a few people who had gathered in that country church. On my very first Sunday there, I walked into this tiny country church and I heard an old hymn being played by the pianist of the Big Bend church. To my surprise, the pianist was the custodian, Mr. Lemon. Over that year, I watched this simple, gentle, humble human being live out his faith not only behind a piano, but also beside a broom. His life and his witness was genuine and humble. His light burned as bright as any teacher I ever had here. He was just as much of the Wesleyan aura and legacy as any high-profile administrator I ever met. Mr. Lemon stands today for me as an example of what Wesleyan provides, the complete package. Through him, the light came on, and I began to understand more completely about what it meant to back up what you say you believe with kind and gracious acts of encouragement. The lights came on for me around the t-shirt. It doesn't mean much to most of you in this room. But this t-shirt represents the uniform for the best independent, non-Greek intramural team in the history of West Virginia Wesleyan. Okay, guys. P-A-T-R-O-S-S Albatross. Now, while we tore it up in Spring Sing under the exceptional and superb leadership of Jeff Hott, amen. If records were kept for intramural sports teams at Wesleyan, our team surely would have been listed as the best at losing. Rarely, if ever, did we win an intramural flag football, volleyball, or basketball game. Our most famous effort was a play called Parker Cheat. Jay Parker, who is here today, would seemingly trot off the field when we were in the huddle, trying to fool the team that we were making a substitute. But Jay never went off the field. He just idly stood by the sideline. We would break the huddle and snap the ball, and our quarterback would heave a bomb into the end zone, where Jay Parker would be in the end zone with no one covering it. It was our most famous play. But the problem was, the other team figured out our nonsense very early. And so the play only worked once during my entire 4 years here. We had to take it out of the playbook. But that play has never been removed from our minds. 35 years later, I serve on the board of trustees with one of those albatross guys. I work with 2 of them as clergy colleagues in the Western Pennsylvania Annual Conference, and I count a large majority of them as the best friends I ever made in my life. Noblest dreams of life began on the field, and the light came on around teamwork, friendship, laughter, and things that endure despite the passage of time. Joe told you that I came here as a biology and chemistry major and left majoring in sociology and psychology. The light was very dark in biology class. I could not seem to find the light bulb when it came to Dr. Gregg's constant obsession over orchids. And Dr. Monty's pursuit of the pressure volume constant. But the light bulb came on. And it burned brightly through the insight, wisdom, and teaching from names like Warner, Berkovitz, Holmes, Carr, and Heeterman. Well, truth be told, I blew out a lot of light bulbs in Heeterman's class. She was a bear of a teacher. Nonetheless, those professors formed and shaped my life. They took me to places where I could never have gone on my own. Now, I could go on, but the point I'm simply affirming is that this is a place where the words of our alma mater come alive. Wesleyan has been a place where noblest dreams of life began. And you've come here today, too, because you have some of those noble dreams that you remember. A series of those light bulb moments where you know that your life was altered and changed for a lifetime. If you're a current student and are still awake, your dreams are being fashioned by the relationships that are being made here that'll last a lifetime. Experiences that will linger far beyond your time here. Classes that will open your eyes and shape the formation of your careers. You will create memories here that will somehow find their way to your lips even when the onset of early dementia takes away your short-term memory. If we had time and I had a portable microphone, we could fill this day with stories of noble dreams that were unrealized when we first walked onto this campus, but somehow found their way into the DNA of our being because of the discovery that there was a bulb and a socket. And when the two come together, there was a light that burned brightly into the darkness of our lives. You had a story, a memory, a realization that in this place some of your noblest dreams began. You wouldn't be here if you didn't. We gather in this place where the noble dreams of a group of Methodists were realized when an education committee was organized in 1874 that led to the formation of a school on a 43-acre plot in Buckhannon, West Virginia in 1890. We sit today in a building that was the centerpiece of a noble dream that was facilitated and brought to life by a man by the name of Stanley Martin. As the 11th president of West Virginia Wesleyan, Stanley Martin was the architect of Wesleyan's greatest period of growth that turned a long-range plan into a lasting and enduring legacy, not the least of which is this chapel that stands in the center of this campus as a visual reminder of how when a bulb is screwed into a socket, a bright light will emerge. I would be remiss today if I did not acknowledge that while there have been numerous administrations from Stanley Martin's time until today, there have been noteworthy and transformative events that have taken place in Wesleyan's history in its recent time through the administration and the hard work of Dr. Pam Balch. And I think we should thank our president for the and the ongoing support of staff, faculty, and trustees. The Wesleyan campus and its student body are lighting the way for higher education, not only in central West Virginia, but all across this region, as a light that burns in the darkness. So here we are, gathered to remember 125 years, and to set our sights on the next 125. What is it that we've been given, that we are called to? We are witnessing in a variety of sectors a stark rise in the number of people who are more concerned about their agendas than they are about our common pursuits. Probably the most visible example of this is the current political debates that are happening both on CNN and in the halls of Congress, where the lack of collaboration and teamwork has pierced the landscape of a country that has stood for generations as a place where unity has been the driving passion for all that we have stood for and accomplished. Moving forward, West Virginia Wesleyan can be a place where students are invited into collaborative models of leadership, where a strong ethic of we can trump the shallow approach of me. Moving into our next 125 years can be a time when Wesleyan accurately surveys that landscape of what is missing and inject principles, ethics, and intentional education that will breed leadership that works for the common good and reaches out with a passion to plant into our culture opportunities where noblest dreams of life can begin there as well. Today, across our world, we find ourselves more uncertain and afraid than ever. Whether due to terrorism on a global front, the threat of yet another shooting on one of our college campuses, or a random act of road rage on a nearby interstate, we are living in a climate of anger that threatens most of the securities that we've leaned on for a lifetime. As we move forward, West Virginia Wesleyan can be a place where civility is emphasized and taught. A place where the result of civil dialogue is an atmosphere where a deeper appreciation for diversity of thought is celebrated and affirmed. Wesleyan can and should commit itself to the lofty goals of forming leaders who go out into the world and demonstrate through their influence that there is something higher and far better than the standard operating procedures of winners versus losers that is dominating the landscape of our world. It was those kind of dreams that drove a group of visionary leaders to see something no one else could see on these 43 acres in 1890. I'm sure some people thought they were crazy. But noble dreams not only began in 1890, they have been realized for 125 years and continue to be dreamed by people on this campus who one day realized that there was a ball and a socket, and when the two were put together, a bright light begins to shine. They are the kinds of dreams that are still embraced by our current mission statement, where the goal of this college is to graduate students who think critically and creatively, communicate effectively, act responsibly, and demonstrate their local and world citizenship through service. Some call that crazy. But Wesleyan has and will continue to turn those dreams into reality, a reality of what actually happens right here in this, our home among the hills. In the fall of 1976, I attended my first homecoming. During the Founders Day service that day, the tour choir sang a song. As I may roam, I hurry home,
to the friendly hills I love. And I cry every time my home among the hills is sung. I become a 57-year-old weeping fool every time the tour choir sings those words and some pretty young girl sings the ooh part. But my tears are not because of the tune. They flow because of the reality that people like you and me often roam far away from the roots of who we are and how we became who we are. And when we realize that we've roamed too far, we are reminded not only of the friendly hills we love, we are reminded that it was here, in our home among the hills, that one day we, all of us, discovered that there was a bulb and a socket, and with the help of others, we put the two together. And on that day, a bright light began to shine. Alma mater of the mountains, West Virginia Wesleyan, at thy magic, mystic fountains, noblest dreams of life began. We, thy children, bow before thee. We, thy children, now adore thee, and pledge God who watches o'er thee, thou shalt fill the ample measure of his plan. Happy anniversary, West Virginia Wesleyan. May God richly bless you.